bicycle is one of the primary transportation of the human race. An estimated 1.6 billion bicycles are in use throughout the world, in cosmopolitan cities, along remote country lanes, and in the smallest villages, and hundreds of millions of bikes are manufactured every year to meet the continuing demand for cheap wheeled transport. It was very difficult to attribute the design of bicycle to one particular individual. The first bicycle was a walking machine. It was a simple design that comprised of basically two same size wheels in line. The front wheel was steerable and was made totally of wood. It was propelled by pushing the feet against the ground. Simply put, the device helped the rider to a sort of glide work. This cycle was commonly known as the dressienne or a hobby horse. This enjoyed a short-lived popularity as it was not very practical. In 1865, pedals were applied to the front wheel of the bicycle and were known as the velocipede, fast foot. The ride was so bumpy that it earned the nickname Bone Shaker. This too was made entirely of wood, though later metal tires were used. This combination too made the ride rather uncomfortable and was used as a hobby and died as another fad. In 1870, the first all-metal machine appeared. The pedals were still attached directly to the front wheel with no freewheeling mechanism. Solid rubber tires and the long spokes of the large front wheel provided a much smoother ride than its predecessor. The front wheels became larger and larger as makers realized that the larger the wheel, the further you could travel with one rotation of the pedals. You would purchase a wheel as large as your leg length would allow. This machine was the first one to be called a bicycle. These bicycles enjoyed a great popularity among young men of means, with the heyday being the decade of the 1880s. But this design too had its set of faults. The rider was seated so high above the center of gravity that if the front wheel was stopped by a stone or rut in the road, the rider was dropped unceremoniously on his head. Thus the term taking a header came into being. By the next 2 to 3 decades, many mechanical innovations were made, such as rack and pinion steering, brakes, etc. With improvement in metallurgy, small and light chains of sprockets came into being, and the design of the bicycle returned to the original configuration of two same-size wheels. The bicycle still had the hard rubber tires, and in the absence of the long shock-absorbing spokes, the ride they provided was much more uncomfortable than any of the high-wheel designs. The pneumatic tire was first applied to the bicycle by an Irish veterinarian who was trying to give his young son a more comfortable ride on his tricycle. His inventive young doctor's name was Dunlop. Sound familiar? Now, that comfort and safety could be had in the same package. Its popularity shot up dramatically, challenging manufacturers to find cheaper and cost-effective methods of manufacturing the bicycle. This was the beginning of the modern bicycle. Though innovations and improvements in design happen all the time, this bicycle was the closest to the current lot of bicycles that we ride without a care.
So how was the report?